Hello, I'm Terry Messenger. I'm one of the Master Gardeners with the Cornell Cooperative Extension here in Westchester County, and I'm here today with two of my colleagues, Billie Jean Sorensen and Anneke Orangi. We're going to talk today about gardening books, about how to enhance your knowledge of gardening by using books, and we're going to talk about some of our favorite books. I thought that we would start with a basic encyclopedia, which if you want to start a gardening library and you don't have anything at all, I think the best way to start is with a basic encyclopedia. The one that's on the screen, the Encyclopedia of Gardening from the American Horticultural Society, is I got at the library. It's certainly all-inclusive. There are a number of very excellent books that cover the basics of gardening, and that would include soil preparation, how to design a garden, where to start, pruning, a little bit on pruning, which is always a difficult subject for people to kind of get into, diseases, what kinds of plants to put where, and how to care for the plants once you put them in the ground, an all-purpose overall information source. And I think if you're at all serious about gardening, it's probably worth buying an encyclopedia that you can refer to whenever you need it. If you're going to buy one gardening book, I think I would go for a basic encyclopedia. How do you ladies feel? Do you think that that's as good a place as any to start?
No, it's perfect.
It is a good place to start. If you're, however, going to concentrate on perennials, if you know beforehand, then you might want a book that's more involved with perennials or annuals if you're not going to concentrate on perennials.
Yeah.
But certainly a basic
book. Yes, once you get more into gardening, then you can specialize, or you can go to the library and take something out just for a short period of time to find out something that you're particularly interested in. I think that Anneke, you have some interesting books about the history of gardening and about garden design that you were going to share with us.
Okay, and what Billie said, you know, when I started here in America to garden, I'd never done that before. I didn't even know what perennials or annuals were, so I wouldn't know where to start. And then I got for my son a wonderful book, I think, and that's what I want to start with, because I think it is about what women like. I want to read that for a moment, that introduction. Throughout the ages, the garden has always been the domain where women could express their creativity. An English woman's garden explores this unique relationship and looks at some of the fascinating women who have enriched our horticultural heritage and shaped our gardens today. Now, I liked that inspired me. So,
however, Anneke, if there are any men watching, I certainly hope that they will not be deterred by this and that they will feel free to explore in their own gardens. No. You don't have to be female to enjoy a garden.
No, but the men always already were designers before the women. The women were first in the kitchen in medieval times. They had the herb garden.
Yes.
But then slowly but definitely they got into it, and when you read this book, then you get a bit of an idea of the development of designing gardens for women, by women. It's terrible. I go into something, but okay. So the introduction is done by Penelope Hobhouse. And that name is so beautiful name, I think, Penelope Hobhouse. And
especially the way you say it.
Okay. Now, that's the second group of books that I was interested in. And here I have chosen one, The Garden Designs, but she wrote about gardening many books. Now, this Penelope Hobhouse was a woman with a very simple background. She had absolutely no education into gardening, and she was an amateur gardener, and her background was nothing to do with it, and she had no professional training. I think that is encouraging for everybody who wants to do a bit of gardening. You start somewhere, and that's why I wanted to tell.
Yes. It certainly personalizes it, doesn't it, to have a personality like that.
Yeah, and she is a woman who also, for those of us who are interested in it, has done a lot of videos. And these I bought in the botanical garden
beautiful
shop, and it's really worthwhile. So that's what I wanted to say about it, and start reading.
Very good.
Sounds like a wonderful history of gardening.
Fun to read during the winter when you can't actually do gardening. Billie, I know that you're a perennial specialist, and I bet you have something on perennials for us.
I certainly do. As you recall, Terry, you and I went over to Greenwich about 4 or 5 years ago to hear a young woman named Tracy DeSabato-Aust talk about her book, The Well-Tended Perennial Garden. And I think for you as well as for me, this has become a Bible. I use this book every day during the summer, and it's just, she talks about soil preparation, staking, pruning, every detail you need to know about perennial gardens. She also has an encyclopedia inside the book, and this is really the gem of the book. More than 175 perennials are listed. She gives planting and maintenance schedule. Let's just look at one example in this book to kind of give people an idea how to use it. Filipendula rubra venusta is blooming right now everywhere. And if you've seen those deep rose flowers, fluffy compound leaves, they're all about now. And that is one of the perennials that we grow a lot in Pleasantville. And she gives the common name, the family, a description, the size. This one happens to grow 4 to 6 feet high. Exposure, this one needs full sun. She tells you that. Flowering, July and August. She tells you that. She tells you when to prune, and she tells you other maintenance issues, whether the plant likes a great deal of moisture or not. And she tells you related plants also, Filipendula purpurea and Filipendula vulgaris. So it's really a wonderful book, and I do want to say that the Pleasantville Garden Club gave this book to the Pleasantville Library, the Mount Pleasant Library, so it is available there, and it's a wonderful book on perennials. I can't recommend it too highly.
It is a wonderful book, and it just tells you what to do once you've got the plants, which
exactly.
is not, and it also has some nice color photos. I think it's important to look at books that have good color photos, because a picture is worth 1,000 words when it comes to studying plants and figuring out what you want for yourself.
Yeah, that's something I didn't tell, but when you read about these garden designs, then you see all sorts of gardens. You think, hey, that's not a garden I like. Those colors are not my colors. That orange is not to my taste. Or, oh, how wonderful, orange and red. And when you read several books like what you said, then you get an idea, hey, what is in my
I just want to point out before we go into annuals, which I know you're very interested in and have a lot of lovely annuals in your own garden. Perennials come up every year. Once you put the plant in the ground, unless something terrible happens, it should come back every year, provided it's appropriate for the site. And you're going to do a little something on annuals, I think, which are plants that do everything in one season. They sprout from seed, they grow, they bloom, they create new seeds for the coming year, and then they die.
I think that the big difference between perennials and annuals is too that the perennial blooms every year, but 14 days, 3 weeks, if you are lucky, 2 months. But an annual, only 1 year, but when it starts blooming, it blooms through the whole season.
And
so
then it's gone.
And then it's gone. So it's a good filler of little.
Yes,
you know,
it gives, most annuals give a lovely blast of color.
Yeah, I like that.
Certainly, most good gardens have a blend of of annuals and perennials, certainly. And perennials do need some care too. They need to be divided every 3 or 4 years usually, and so each has its own characteristics.
And I don't want to be too pessimistic, but if the deer come by, and they come by your beautiful phlox that only bloom so long every year, and
they're
they
gone.
got it up, then it's nice that you have some marigolds or something that the deer don't like, and it are annuals. You want me
you
to
have
tell
a book
something?
here about how to seed your own annuals, which is
Now, Billie, we were very enthusiastic about this book, weren't we?
Yes, yes, absolutely.
And the reason is, when you are seeding, there are we do that perhaps in front of the windowsill in a little pot, but it requires good light or a bit shady light. How many days will it take to the seeds come up?
Yes.
To appear. I wanted to. This book is fantastic. It is from seed to bloom, it says, and it tells you everything you want to know. For example, I've taken two flowers out of it. A marigold. Now, people know marigold, but they don't know the other name. The Latin names are in it and the American names. So you can always find the seed that you want, because it's doubly
if you
connotated.
know only one of the names, yes.
And then furthermore, I wanted to read that. Now let's say, here we have the Lathyrus, sweet pea. So I know sweet pea, I don't know Lathyrus. I look it up in the back and it says sweet pea, Lathyrus, page 170. Now then it says it's an annual. Where does it flower? Oh, in zone 1 or till 10. It tells you where you can sow it, indoors, outdoors, when the best time of sowing is, the depth. Some seeds have to go on top of the soil, some have to be covered a bit. Here, with this annual Lathyrus, it says, and a lot of people said, oh, is that the trick? It says here, requirements: chip seeds or soak in warm water for 24 hours.
That's a good
That's
trick.
a thing
Yes.
that you find in
a
this
little
book.
trick, yes.
And that is what it's all about. Here there's so many things that you don't know. For example, some flowers, some seeds need to be germinating, you say, in a temperature of between 60 and 70. Some lower, and some in warmer temperature. And it's all in this book.
That's wonderful. I want to tell our audience actually that Anneke is rather an expert on this. She ran groups for the Pleasantville Garden Club all last winter, well, last spring, when seeding started. And 4 or 5 people would go to her house on a certain day of the week and plant and propagate new perennials and annuals. So this is her Bible that she used.
I'm not an expert, but we do it together. But the wonderful thing is that they say, hey, after a few weeks it came up, and after a few months, hey, it bloomed. Because everybody is amazed that these tiny little things, as my grandson said to me today, Grandma, Oma, he says, and that, is that from that little seed, is that becoming that tree? I mean, you know,
It is a miracle.
You see, it is a miracle.
It is a miracle. And there's a wonderful sense of satisfaction, I think, seeing a plant that you started from a tiny seed. It really makes you feel
I encourage
like
everybody to do it. We had this winter a mother with 2 children, and the boy made a program for school, and they had chosen that program. He showed the other children how to seed.
Really?
So you would encourage people to try some seeds.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not as complicated as it seems, and nature is very forgiving, isn't she? we can make a lot of mistakes and things
can't
still
go
grow.
wrong.
Yes, someone told me when I was just starting out, you can't kill a marigold.
And the deer don't eat it.
Another topic that I think we all feel needs its own special attention is shade gardening. So many people say, "Oh, I can't grow a thing. I've got nothing but shade."
Yep.
It's not true. You can. I know, Billie, you've started a wonderful little shade garden this year and have had a good time doing it.
It's very exciting. For the first time, I'm really excited about shade gardening and the variety of plants one can grow in the shade.
And a shade garden never gets that awful burned out, dried up, sort of ratty look that a garden in full sun can get along about August. If we've had a hot, dry summer, they can really get terribly worn out looking, and the shade gardens don't. They look lush.
And the interesting thing about them, I think, that there's not a lot of bloom in a shade garden, but you can use a variety of plants with all sorts of colors.
Yes, leaves
variegated
and textures.
leaves and heuchera that are purple looking, and white flowers and plants. So it's amazing how much variety there can be.
I was looking in the Pleasantville Library for a good book on shade gardening for myself, and I noticed that there are 31 listed titles on shade gardening, so there really is quite a body of information there. And it's important, I think, to read a little bit about shade gardening, because first of all, there are 4 different kinds of shade, which I think is pretty amazing. There's absolutely dead dark shade, and then there's dappled shade where the sun sort of filters through the trees. Then there's half shade, and then there's half sun, and plants do better in the particular shade circumstance that they like. So it's important to do a little studying, I think, if you're going to do a shade garden. But the material is there, the information is there, and it's as you say, it's very satisfying to.
Do we have
Did you find a wonderful book?
Yes, I do. This is one that I got from the library. This favorite plants for shades, 100 favorite plants. I like this one because it's got lovely color photos in it. Yeah. Again, I'm terribly dependent upon color photos when plants are being talked about if I don't know the plant.
Me too. And the interesting thing, when it says 100, that gives you an idea of what variety you have for the shade. 100 plants is impressive. Yeah.
Yes,
I have to look at it myself. I haven't seen that one.
It's quite a lovely book. Yes.
I hope that variegated Haconocloa is in it.
It is.
Love
it
variegated. There's nothing but variegated. Do you know that?
For folks who don't know, it's a grass, and it has a yellowish sort of chartreusey color that glows in the shade. And there are not too many grasses that like shade, but that one does. It has a lovely growth habit. It sort of spills over like a waterfall on itself. And I think, Billie, you were going to say something about herbs, which I think is something that a lot of people are interested in, who may not be interested in a grand garden on a large scale, but maybe just want a few things they can grow on their windowsill.
I came across a wonderful book last year called The Complete Book of Herbs. We did talk about whether to say herbs or herbs.
Yes,
the British now say herbs, do they?
They do, which is quite surprising, because they usually drop
herbs or herbs.
This is
in Holland. This is a wonderful book because it has such a variety of information in it. It talks about how to cultivate. It gives photos of the seed, the leaf, the flowers. There's a section on herbal decorations, from nosegays to garland wreaths for Christmas. There's a section on herbs in the kitchen, and she gives about 50 pages of recipes using herbs.
Good.
She talks about household uses, controlling pests, house cleaning, and herbal dyes. She talks about herbs for potpourri. She talks about cleansing creams for the face and gives recipes on how to make herbs into cleansing cream for your face, and essential oils in massage, and it's an enormous amount of information, all the information you'll ever want to have on herbs. But she also points out that you can have an herb garden in the house or on the porch. You don't have to, if you have very little space, you can grow them right in pots.
Or you live in an apartment, you don't have to give up gardening entirely.
Yeah, yes. I have it above my kitchen sink. I cut off my basil.
Pop it into your
spaghetti sauce. Yeah, I highly recommend that book. She talks about indoor, outdoor, aromatic children's gardens, just a culinary and so on. It's a really wonderful book.
I see also that you've got Durr's Book of Woody Plants, which is a real tome, but it's full of an enormous amount of information.
It's enormous. There are really thousands of pages. It's a manual of woody landscape plants, their identification, ornamental characteristics, culture, I'm reading now, propagation, and uses. And it's a fascinating book because you can find out any information you need on a tree. I noticed he has listings, Michael Deere, on birch trees from pages 126 to 140. So you can find every cultivar of birch trees that you could ever hope to find, and all sorts of woody shrubs and trees. He gives the size, the hardiness, the habit, the flowers, the fruit, the culture, the diseases, the landscape value, the cultivars. And some of these, I noticed under clethra, for instance, I think there are about 25 varieties of clethra, and we only see usually 2 or 3 around here. He talks about propagation and native habitats and so on. So it's more of a reference book, and I'm hoping this will be in our library one of these days soon, because it's such a big, impressive book that it may not be as useful in the home as it would be to go to the library and use it as a reference.
I wanted to ask, a beginner gardener, is it Latin or Greek from,
no,
can you really?
A beginning gardener could certainly use it.
Okay,
I went in when I was going to buy 2 more clethras and looked them up in this book, and decided that I wanted the ruby spice because it was one that he liked so much. I also read, I was reading about mock orange, which he does not like at all. He said it's a useless plant because it blooms for a couple of weeks, and then it's not a very attractive plant. And I had just bought one that's growing hugely. But then he said he'd seen some varieties and he was weakening on the subject. so it's
a little subjective.
It's an interesting book to read. He closes each section out with these little objective comments.
Is it
on
with pictures?
No pictures, but there are drawings of the leaves and the buds, and so to help you identify trees and shrubs. It's a book that I learned about at Cornell. It was one of the ones that they regard highly, I believe.
Anneke, I'm intrigued by your diary, and I don't want to end the program without your sharing how you use this. This is a personal journal that Anneke keeps, and it's
now, you hear that always, that you have to do it, but most people don't do it, so I didn't do it too.
And then I was in trouble because I didn't know when to plant. I didn't know, we will give a party. Is there anything in the garden blooming, etc. So I bought it at Carol Botner's, and I write through everything. And in it, I have now 3 years or so, and I'm getting there. It's almost. And the wonderful thing is I can see, the first year I did my vegetable garden. Where did I put my tomatoes? That was a disaster with these peas. And I put big crosses in the, what do you call that thing here?
The margin.
In the margin, when I want to do next year a bit different thing. So,
No, I was just going to say, if a person doesn't have the time or energy to do a complete diary, I do think one thing that's very important is to keep a list of the new plants you buy every year, because by the next spring you may have forgotten what they are, what their characteristics are. I try to at least, I don't do a job like you do, Anneke, on a diary.
But you didn't read my diary. It's very...
I'm sure it's very interesting. Yeah, but I do keep a list of plants that I plant each year so that I can go back to them and know what variety I bought.
And Billie, you do a lot with photos, do you not? I've certainly seen a lot of pictures of your garden, which is enormously helpful, I think. If you've got a dry period where nothing's blooming, you can remember that.
Or if you have a bed of annuals, for instance, that you want to remember what you planted to replant them another year, then you can go and look at the picture, and there they are in all their glory. So yes, that's a useful thing as well. The other thing that I have found useful, if we have a minute to talk about it, is the website. I have really been surprised and delighted with the amount of information you can get on the website. I have a wonderful shrub called a cotinus, which has marvelous purple leaves all summer. And 2 or 3 years ago, I asked Terry even to look at it because it started to rust, the leaves started to wilt and fall off, so I went into Google and I put in cotinus, and I cannot tell you how many entries there were. It was an enormous amount of entries. And under it, under the disease part, I found verticillium rust. And it was obviously just what was wrong with my plant. I fed the plant, I watered it deeply, I kept an eye on it, and it has recovered. It's like beautifully new.
And you got all that information at the website, what to do, not only identifying it, but what to do.
Exactly. Exactly.
If we still have the time, there's a little thing. Do we have time?
Just 1
Kathy
minute.
Jones. She had on the website which trees were the best for the corner at Michael's Pub. You know that corner in the old village, Michael's Pub.
Yes,
and
yes, where yes,
and the bakery.
Where there are new
and
trees.
And
yes.
lovely trees now. And she found out these trees in very difficult circumstances survive. And she found on the website.
Is that Kathy Jones?
Yeah.
Yes.
And she found
Yes.
it's absolutely amazing, and I think that's wonderful.
It
Yes,
is.
it's an enormous resource. It's enormous.
It is.
We don't think about.
It is. I think we're just about out of time. I want to thank you both. I think it's been a very interesting discussion, and I hope that it's been informative for our viewers. And I also want to thank them for joining us.